Well, it is my joy to welcome you to the University United Methodist Church and the Wesley Foundation. I'm Pastor Bill Chu. I'm part of the leadership team here at the Wesley Foundation and University Church. I bring you greetings from the senior pastor, Jennifer Brown, and we're thrilled that you could be here tonight to celebrate this International Day of Peace. Just a few notes about our facility. If you need a restroom, the closest one to us is right out into the gathering space, and if you go through that door, and it's the first door on your left as you exit the gathering space here. And then the other bathrooms are nearby. You can go through these exits and down the stairs. There's a men's bathroom on this side, and if you go through this exit down the stairs, there's a women's bathroom on that side. Immediately following our time together, there will be an opportunity for us to gather and share some information and fellowship, and so I invite you to join us in our Asbury Hall, which is just out through the gathering space and down the steps. And before you go out the door, make a right-hand turn there, and there you will find cookies and fruit and cheese and all sorts of goodies, and so I hope that you're able to stick around. So welcome, everyone.
Zago from the Shalom Center for Justice and Peace. And I want to welcome you as well on behalf of the Shalom Center. This is the Shalom Center's fourth, we've celebrated International Day of Peace for the 6 years, but this is our fourth Voices of Faith and Reason. And we are so excited about partnering with the Wesley Foundation and also the MSU's Interfaith Council. So thank you for coming tonight. I do want to thank University UMC for having this here this year, and it's a wonderful space. And our speakers and our musicians, thank you so much. What a gift. And also to Rebecca Farnham. Rebecca's not here tonight. She's in England, but she's with us in spirit, and she would be with us on Skype if she could, but she can't. She planned this and developed this and worked with all of you to make this happen tonight, and we're grateful. I want to introduce our speakers because they're going to, when they're speaking, they will just be standing up. You can follow in your bulletin or your flyer. Jesse Traub will be speaking. Libby Bartlett. You want to raise your hands as you're, okay, and Libby. And Shahid Nazir. And Mohammed Khalil. And for our Jewish faith, unfortunately, we didn't have someone that was able to come tonight, but Kayla Tipton has agreed to do a reading for the Jewish faith tonight. So thank you so much for coming.
Is on? Okay, there we go. Peace, shalom, and salam, everyone. My name is Erin O'Connor, and I'm chair of the MSU Campus Interfaith Council. We're an organization on campus that strives to increase interfaith understanding and cooperation through dialogues, through community service projects, and various collaborative events. We also serve a really important function in Michigan State because we're the official voice to the student government regarding religious freedom and various religious matters on campus. We do not believe in proselytizing any one particular tradition, but rather in bringing people together in an effort to understand and appreciate human diversity and to use this to seek peace and to seek justice. This summer, the Sikh community in America experienced a tragedy, one that cannot be described easily through verbal language. Our diction and syntax can barely do it justice, and in truth, we shouldn't attempt to define this event by describing the violence and the devastation that occurred. Rather, we should define the Wisconsin tragedy by looking at the incredible strength and resilience of the Sikh community in America, and by reflecting on the ways in which people of different backgrounds and different worldviews have come to their aid. So tonight we have gathered to celebrate International Day of Peace and to share our personal reflections on the necessity for peace and justice with our neighbors. As a Muslim woman with Catholic parents, I feel a very strong connection to the interfaith movement and to the belief that we should transcend tolerance and aim instead for the goal of acceptance. Each one of us is here because we feel that peacemaking is a duty incumbent upon us and a commitment our worldviews call us to make. After all, wealth and power do not serve as prerequisites for peace. Progress and influence can stem from any individual and originate from any corner of the world. So as everyday Americans and individuals in the Lansing and East Lansing community, an opportunity to catalyze the peace process lies in our hands. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to talk a little bit, just a brief talk about the idea of peace from a Baha'i perspective. One of the major tenets of the Baha'i faith is unity, that mankind should be unified, and that it's essential in this day and age for us to all be as brothers and sisters, as the leaves of one branch and the fruits of one tree, perfectly united. And from a certain point of view, that the only way we can reach peace, really, is through unity, by unifying together. In the Baha'i writings, Baha'u'llah says, "The well-being of mankind, its peace and security, are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established." And again, this isn't just some airy ideal, the sort of nice, fuzzy notion of unity and peace and love, but it is that. On an individual level, we should be united and united with our neighbor. But unity, again, isn't just the absence of war. It's something more than that. Two neighbors could have nothing to do with each other, and they couldn't truly said to be at peace. Only when they're cooperating and in harmony and communication would a fair observer be able to state that, yes, these two neighbors are indeed at peace. And in a similar sense, so it is with the nations of the world, that we can't really have peace on a grand scale without the involvement of everyone in the world. And so this is elaborated further in our writings, that for peace to truly come to this world and to everyone, it's necessary for all the nations of the world to uphold and upraise the standard, to come together. All the leaders of the world, of all the lands, need to come together and basically have a very solemn agreement to end all conflicts and all aggression with each other, and to promise that if anyone should arise against another, every other nation in the world will stand up to him to end his aggression, to end that nation's aggression. And it has to be enforced. Otherwise, we'll continue in the same way that we are now. But I think if we look at the direction the world is going today, there's signs that this is happening, that we're going towards this goal. We look at the United Nations. It's an international organization quite devoted to peace and ending conflict. Its ability to enforce its goals may not be as strong as we'd like, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. I mean, we have this sort of interesting dynamic today where everyone would agree that peace is a noble goal and it's a worthy thing that we should all go towards, and it's something that's necessary. And everyone wants peace and harmony. But at the same time, you have many people who just view it as impossible to attain, that they essentially state that human beings are incorrigibly selfish and aggressive, that they're incapable of truly working together on a worldwide scale. I think this view is somewhat short-sighted. I think if you look at humanity, we've always been progressing towards a greater level of cooperation throughout entire history. We started out as individuals. We learned to work together in our families, and then our tribes, and then as towns, city-states, nations. We're working together now at the level of international blocks, and we already see the glimmerings that we're working together at the world level. And I think that it's just far from being impossible. If you look at our nature, it's inevitable that we'll achieve this level of unity, that as long as we have individuals and ourselves working towards it, and nations working towards it, there's no reason in the world why we shouldn't be able to have peace. And so I'm quite hopeful for the future, and I think everyone else should be as well. And just to close, here's a prayer from the Baha'i writings about peace and unity. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family, and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father, God, gladden our hearts with the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful, thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind.
As was mentioned earlier, we are unable to have a Jewish representative with us this evening because of Rosh Hashanah. Our Jewish sisters and brothers are currently celebrating their new year, reflecting on the past and working to correct any mistakes. The season of Rosh Hashanah is truly a focus on commissioning peace, as Jews seek to make peace with anyone they have knowingly or unwittingly offended in their day-to-day lives. I'd like to share with you a selected reading from a Rosh Hashanah celebration. This is entitled, Meaning to Our Fleeting Days. Who are we? What are we? A leaf in the storm, a fleeting moment in the flow of time, a whisper lost among the stars. We are tenants in the house of life. Our days on earth are but a span. Time, like a river, rolls on, flowing year after year into the sea of eternity. Its passing leaves bitter moments of hours misspent. Now they come back to accuse us, and we tremble to think of them. But conviction and purpose give meaning to our fleeting days. Treasured teaching guides us. Unquestioning love sustains us. May we have the knowledge and strength to live responsibly. May we be released from bondage to the past, released from the stranglehold of bad habits, making ourselves free to start afresh. Let this be for us the beginning of a new season of life and health. May we be liberated from the fear of death and from the scornful laughter that mocks our labors. Though our lives be short, let them be full. May our mortal days endure as eternal moments. Knowing our feelings, let us be patient with those of others. Knowing our will to goodness, may we see in others a dignity that is human. Every soul is precious, and every life is a gift.
When I think of peace, I think of loving one another and caring for the earth. This can be as easy as being best friends, not kicking your neighbor's dog. That goes with Christianity, because in Mark chapter 12, verse 31, Jesus says, love your neighbor like yourself. To me, loving your neighbor like yourself means that you love yourself the most, and just because you don't like someone doesn't mean you can't love them. When I was around 6, there was a boy at school who was mean to me. When I came home and told my mom about it, she gave me the normal "it'll be okay" speech, where she says stuff like, can you just ignore him? Do you need me to call the teacher or his mom? Is there anything I can do to help? Then, a few days later, I told my mom that me and the boy were friends. She made sure I knew that since he was mean to me, I didn't have to be his friend. I told her that I didn't like his behavior, but I liked him because Jesus tells us to love everybody. This story reminds me of peace, because to have peace, you have to have forgiveness. There are many different kinds of love. The first kind of love is neighborly love, just being able to let them borrow an egg because you love them in the neighborly way. This is being compassionate. Next, there is friendly love, just being a good friend by asking things like, "How are you doing today?" Then there is family love, how you love your family. This can be saying good night, good morning, or just giving them a hug. Kissy love is last. I get the phrase from my sister Brenly. She says love means when you love a person so much that you want to marry them, but when you marry a person, you have to kiss them. So what I take from that is kissy love is for kissing. You can choose who you want in kissy love in your friendships, but not your family. To love someone you don't like is as easy as not scowling when you see them and waving kindly. My good friend Desi didn't used to like me, but I kept waving and being kind. I started up a conversation every time I saw her, even if we were both at a grocery store or something. Also, if I saw her parents or other people we both knew, I'd say something like, "Can you tell Desi I said hi?" Soon she started the conversations. As we continued to talk, we got closer and closer. Now she's one of my best friends. God made the world for us. War is just not horrid to us, but it is also devastating to the earth. One of God's greatest gifts for us is the earth. In a biography I read about Eleanor Roosevelt, she talks about going to Germany for her honeymoon. She describes how beautiful the scenery was, the lush grass and the wonderful trees. Then she goes back after the war. The explanation of how the scenery now looked terrible. The grass was ugly and burned. The trees looked like burned sticks sticking out of the ground. Making that image in my mind just devastates me and makes me feel depressed because of how horrible it looks. And also how God worked to make us this world, and we are ruining it by fighting over the land. I can't imagine how Mrs. Roosevelt felt looking at that horrible mess. War is not only treacherous to us, but it kills and ruins the earth, the gift God gave us. In this book, I also read about Eleanor Roosevelt. She decided to go to the bad side of town when she went back to the bad side of town to help poor children have fun. She taught them fun dances and games. When she told her friends about it to try to get them to help, they told her crazy stuff like it was called the bad side of town for a reason, not to go back. Mrs. Roosevelt told them that just because they have less money and live on a different side of town doesn't mean they can't have as much fun as others. Finally, she got her friends to help. Peace is not to be taken for granted. It is a good thing to have in life. If you don't have peace, you won't be able to have friendships. The world won't be calm, things will be hectic and crazy, and there may be war everywhere.
Each year, the Center, Shalom Center for Peace and Justice, selects an organization. Okay. Order of program says I go now, though. And then we have the two more speakers. Yep, okay. So it's our opportunity to be the change that we're waiting for, as we share our gifts to promote peace throughout the world. And this year, we have selected the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin to support. And so I invite you to challenge yourself, to be instruments of peace in the world, to be that change that you seek and you're waiting for. Tonight, we'll collect the offering near the end of our time together here, and as you go out into the gathering space and on your way to enjoy the cookies and the cheese and the fruit, I invite you to see the basket, and it's right on the table as you first come in to this room, to this sanctuary. There's a basket there. And I invite you to leave a donation that we might offer a sign of peace to our sisters and brothers in the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin. Checks can be made out to the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin Memorial Fund as printed on the yellow sheet here.
Humanism is a system of thought that centers on human beings and their shared values, their capacities, and inherent worth. It is primarily concerned with the interests, needs, and the welfare of humans. As humanists, we readily recognize that conflicts, sectarian strife, and violence are human problems. Specifically, they are human-created problems. Consequently, the solutions to these problems need to be sought by humans from different backgrounds all coming together and working together to and listening to each other to find problems to these problems that can sometimes be pretty complex. As humanists, we also recognize that genuine peace is much more than merely an absence of war or conflict between groups of people or entire nations. Genuine peace requires tolerance between individuals and between communities, respect between individuals, respect for individual rights, and ultimately a sense of well-being, harmony, and a desire for peace within every individual heart, and a desire for all people to be able to live in peace. Humanist endeavors for peace are based on the wisdom of various people and philosophies, in addition to the intellectual traditions and philosophical traditions of humanism itself. In the modern world, the grandest expression of this ancient wisdom is perhaps the United Nations. Many prominent humanists were involved in establishing all the key institutions that compose the United Nations. For instance, Eleanor Roosevelt and John Peters Humphrey, they led the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Another humanist, Dr. George Brock Chisholm, was the founding director of the World Health Organization. There are other individuals who are also prominent humanists. They helped in the founding of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and also UNESCO, among many others. Humanism encourages reason, free inquiry, and the free exchange of ideas. And consequently, in a global society, in a multicultural society, this is a very important perspective to have, to be able to recognize that we all have common values and we all desire to be able to live in peace and to follow our own personal dreams at various junctures throughout history, it has been the case that an individual or a community's healthy pride in its own traditions can sometimes transmogrify into an unhealthy attitude of hostility or even contempt for other traditions. And unfortunately, this is where sometimes conflicts can arise, and people act out their hatred for others who are not like themselves, or who they perceive as being different from themselves. This is where a humanist culture of openness and the free flow and exchange of ideas is very important to help us come to an understanding, to recognize the basic humanity of the other person, of other cultures, and to be able to bridge our various differences, to be able to recognize all the common humanity that we find in other people. Thanks.
First, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, particularly Rebecca Farnham, who couldn't be here with us tonight. This evening, I'd like to discuss how Islam defines my own perspective on peace, because ultimately, I can only speak for myself. But if a recent Gallup survey of Muslims worldwide is any indication, it would appear that my own perspectives on peace are shared by countless Muslims from Malaysia to Mecca to Michigan. Nevertheless, for everything that I mentioned this evening, you will find a counter-argument online somewhere by Muslims or non-Muslims. And as you can imagine, I'm familiar with these counter-arguments and have my own counter-arguments to these counter-arguments, but I simply don't have the time to get into all that tonight. I'd like to first begin with the traditional Islamic greeting, and that is Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you. And there's a famous statement of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it is, none of you truly believe or have faith until you wish for your brother what you wish for yourself. This, of course, is the golden rule. We see it in just about every civilization. And Muslim scholars centuries ago explained this statement, and they said that what this means, what this refers to, is brothers and sisters in humanity. This is something that Muslim scholars said centuries ago, that it refers to brothers and sisters in humanity. And this idea of brotherhood and sisterhood in humanity is a concept that has defined my own life over the past few years. And I think that when we recognize, when we see each other as brothers and sisters, when we see that we're more similar than we are different, then it allows us to reach a state where true peace can be achieved. The Islamic holy book, the Quran, contains numerous passages that present peace as the ideal. In the 41st chapter, or surah, we read the following in the English translation: "Good and evil cannot be equal. Repel evil with what is better, and your enemy will become as close as an old and valued friend. But only those who are steadfast in patience, only those who are blessed with great righteousness will attain to such goodness." Of course, the Quran does not simply speak of peace, it also speaks of justice and self-defense. In the 22nd chapter of the Quran, we read, "Permission to fight is given to those against whom war is being wrongfully waged." And so there's this concept in the Quran of a noble fight. But even in these passages of warfare, passages incidentally addressed to individuals living in a virtually lawless, anarchic Arabian society marked by a perennial state of warfare. Even in these passages of warfare, we see that peace remains the ideal. As we read in the 8th chapter of the Quran, "But if they incline to peace, incline to it as well, and place your trust in God." In the 60th chapter we read, "God may still bring about affection between you and your present enemies." there is a concept of loving your enemies. To my mind, the defining feature of Islam is the concept of rahmah, which means loving mercy. It is related to the term rahim, which is the womb of the mother, the center of love and mercy. And almost every chapter of the Quran begins with the statement, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, which means in the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Or in another translation, the lovingly compassionate, the lovingly caring. The Quran says that this rahmah, this loving mercy, encompasses all things, all things. And we see this notion of rahmah, of loving mercy, and how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, treated his family, his friends, children, animals, and even enemies. The Quran records the many hurtful things people said about him. They called him a liar, a magician, a madman. And in response, he was commanded in the Quran to do just one thing, and I sure wish people, more of my fellow believers, listen to this. And that was to be patient. And that's what the Prophet did. He was patient. And when the sanctity of his community was not at stake, he forgave even those who fiercely were opposed to him. And I'd like to close by mentioning a story of a man named Abdullah ibn Ubay. This was a man from Medina who constantly challenged the Prophet Muhammad behind his back, trying to raise doubts about his leadership. He played a leading role, in accusing his wife of infidelity. And he even reportedly planned to assassinate Muhammad. And yet, despite all this, the Prophet was patient with him. Imagine you're living in the same town as someone who is bent on undermining you. And yet the Prophet was patient with him until the day he, Abdullah, died. But that's not the end of the story. When he died, his son asked the Prophet if he could use the Prophet's own garment to wrap his father's body in it. The Prophet agreed. He also asked the Prophet if he, the Prophet, could actually lead the funeral prayer for his father. And just before he began to pray, a companion of his tried to stop him. And he said, "Are you really going to pray for this man? Do you know what he did?" And he began to list all the things that he did to harm the Prophet. And every time he mentioned something, the Prophet smiled. And when the companion was done, the Prophet said, "Get in line. Get in line for the prayer." And then the Prophet is quoted as saying, "If I knew that God would forgive him, if I prayed more than 70 times, I would increase the number of my supplications." And I think that, I'll conclude with this, I don't think there can be any true faith without any true desire for peace. Thank you.
Started something new, offering an award or grant to a graduate student and an undergraduate student on justice, on a program that they would be doing, a project that they would be doing on justice. The fundamental, or peace, but the fundamental basis of peace begins in justice. And this year we have 3 outstanding award winners of the grant. And I'd like to introduce them to you, and we will commission them as well. The first is Ian Werkheiser. He's a PhD student in philosophy at MSU. Samantha Knoll, also a PhD student at MSU. They are both working together on a project for a 2-day workshop on food justice. It's entitled From Theory to Practice, a workshop on food justice. Keep your eyes out for it. The third person is an undergraduate, Jaya Gupta, an undergraduate student pursuing Bachelor of Science, Biomedical Laboratory Science, and Human Biology, May 2013. She's also awarded a Semester of Shalom grant. That's what we titled them. She'll be working with Dr. Fred Gifford on issues of social justice concerning public health, global public health. All three of these students have a deep passion for social justice. Their credentials and experiences are outstanding. Their proposals address significant issues and will be valuable contributions in furthering the goal of justice and peace. I encourage you after the program to talk with them and hear more about their projects. So would you come over here? And I'd like to invite the speakers to put hands on them, and the audience to stand and reach your hands to them as we commission them.
Samantha Ian Jair. In celebration of the International Day of Peace, accept this commissioning from all of us gathered here in the name of faith and of reason. We bless the work you have done and are doing to bring about greater peace and justice in our world. Go out today into the world, unwilling to wait for it to change. Instead, be the change that we all want to see. Go with the power of this community. May peace be with you and flow from you.
I and my colleagues gratefully accept your blessing and thank you for being a part of this interfaith community. We look forward to working with you this year as we all work in everyday ways for peace and justice in our cities and in our world. At this time, I would like to invite you to spend some time reflecting about what it is you are called to do. Perhaps you have heard about a project tonight that you need to be involved in. Perhaps you have heard about how you need to commit to better watch the words you use with other people. Perhaps it is continuing to do some work you are doing now with more strength and with more compassion. Whatever it is, I invite you to pull out the Charter of Commissioning you should have received in your program tonight, and the band is going to play some music in the background. Please take as long as you need to reflect about how you can be a peacemaker in your everyday life. commissioning from me and from all of us gathered here. You are commissioned to be a peacemaker. You are called to go from this place with your own charter of commission, inspired once again to do the work you feel called to. In the name of faith and of reason, we bless the work you have done and are doing to bring about peace and justice in our world. Go out today into the world, unwilling to wait for it to change. Instead, as Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Go with the power of this community, and may peace be with you and flow from you.
This concludes our program, but not the evening. My hope is that, sisters and brothers, you would join together in fellowship in the Asbury Hall, and so go forth from this place in peace. Salam alaikum. Thank you very much. Peace be with you.